Welcome to Peppershock Media's Marketing Expedition podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in marketing and advertising. Now here's your host, Rhea Allen.
Welcome to the Marketing Expedition series. I'm Rhea Allen, President and CEO of Peppershock Media. And today we're going to talk all about personal branding. I have with me Genny Heikka from her Team Success. Genny, tell me a little bit about yourself and why we're talking about personal branding. What makes you an expert about personal branding?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been excited to be here and appreciate being here. A little bit about myself. So I have a coaching and consulting company, as you mentioned, Her Team Success. And I named it that because I really work with a lot of women, and I wanted the name to speak to a company that helps women thrive, but also that we do it in a team and we do it in community and do it together. I'm a mom. I've got a daughter who's in her second year of college, and I have a son who's a senior in high school. And we are fairly new to Idaho, so we've been here about 4 years. We can, I think, safely call it home now. Good. But how my company started and how I came to this place of just this niche of personal branding and helping women and then companies with personal brand initiatives is when we moved here from California. I have a background in marketing and I have a background in business. And then in addition to that, I've been working with women for, almost 2 decades in different areas of mentoring and leadership and things like that. And when we moved to Idaho from California, I just had kind of this clean slate. And it was more this question of, do I continue to do more of the same, or do I want to do something different? And at the time, I was doing a lot of writing still. I just had a book that had been released in 2014, so that was still part of my life.
And the name of your book?
That was a parenting book that I wrote, Finding Mommy Bliss. So it was specifically for moms that had just come out right before we moved to Idaho. So I moved here, I had this clean slate, and it was this question of, what do I want to do? And so I decided to take a risk, resign from my literary agent, stop writing, and that's a whole separate story because there was a whole lot that went behind that decision. Right. But I just started meeting with more and more women, and what I found is that I was meeting with women from all different careers and backgrounds and walks of life, but the things that we were talking about were the same. And so it was things like, how do I find my purpose? How do I stand out? How do I live with passion? How do I overcome my fears? And so all these questions kept coming up, regardless of career path or the woman that I was working with. And I realized my marketing background was kicking in, and we'd end up having these over coffee, these really caffeinated personal branding sessions where I'd be going through the same process with women over and over. And I thought, you know what, there's something to this. I'm sitting in my sweet spot. All of my business and marketing background was coming forward and then working with these women. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to formalize this. Yes. I created my coaching and consulting practice, and things just kind of took off from there. So that's how I came to be Her Team Success and be where I'm at now. Yeah.
Very good. And some of the things that you do when you talk to women in this sort of ongoing, consistent format that you have now developed, you talked about trees and roots. Tell me what that's all about.
So when I talk about personal branding, I like to compare it to a tree, because when you look at a tree, obviously there's things that you can see, right? So you've got the branches and the leaves and the trunk, but then you have the things that you can't see. You've got the roots that are actually holding the tree up. And so when people are like, what is personal branding? A lot of times people think that personal branding is simply online presence and social media and how many followers do you have? But it's really so much more than that. And so if you look at a tree, the same is true for your personal brand. So you have all of the things that you can see. So you've got your online presence, your social media, your communications, how you present, how you interact with people, how you show up. But then you've got the things that aren't necessarily, visible. Things like all the stuff in your head, your experience, your passions, your values, your strengths, your skills, all these things that make up you. But those are the foundation that really influence how you show up and influence your personal brand. So that's why I use the tree, the tree analogy. But I also like to, when I'm talking to people about personal branding and explaining the value of it, I like to compare it to company brands, which of course you're an expert at. You guys do your brand audits and work with companies on branding. And so like when we think of a company, you know, we know that a company is so much more, their brand is so much more than their logo, right?
Right, absolutely.
So it's not just the logo and, you know, the tagline and even like their website
whole
copy.
Experience, yeah, from start to finish, yeah.
Yeah, and so like when we think of like Amazon, it's like how do we see and experience that company and how do we feel about it, what they're known for? So like I think of like easy, fast, you know, free to Prime, 2-day shipping, and that kind of thing.
The drones bringing packages to my door, right?
Yes. Or like Disneyland. So when we say Disneyland, we're not thinking, oh gosh, the Disneyland logo, or, you know, we might be thinking happiest place on earth, but we're also thinking like what? Like our family memories and our vacations, and it's that feel-good feeling, right?
Right.
And so when I'm working with companies and with people on personal branding initiatives, it's, you know, it's really what are you known for? How are people seeing and experiencing you? And what are you known for? What do you stand for? And so it's the personal brand is so much more than what you say and how you show up. It's that underground stuff too, you know, who you are as a person. Yeah.
And what people might think of you when you're not there, or what you want them to think of you when you're not there.
Yeah.
At least the idea that the brand is there even when you're not in the room at the same time. Right?
Yeah, and what it, like if you get assigned to a project that they're on, well, how do they feel about that? Are they excited? Do they know the specific expertise that you're going to be bringing, the value that you're going to add, that kind of a thing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So if somebody was to engage with you, what would be the first thing that you would do with them? How do you work with them at the very beginning?
So if it's an individual, I do it a little bit different depending if it's a company that wants me to come in and work with leaders, for example, on personal branding initiatives, or if it's a person. But say if it's a person, when I work with women one-on-one, there's just that consult call first is just really understanding, you know, gauging where are they at with even understanding personal branding. Because the interesting thing is we all have a personal brand, whether we know it or not, right?
So whether you want to or not, you're still going to have a brand that people will know and emulate and want to see about you. Absolutely.
Right, yeah. And so whether we've spent any time strengthening it or not, we still have one. So I just talk to them and try to figure out, you know, what are you trying to accomplish? And a lot of times I work with women who are in a place of transition where they maybe are in a job where they're just not fulfilled and they're trying to figure out like, well, what am I supposed to be doing with my life, you know, or they are, you know, changing careers and they're not sure what the next steps are and that kind of a thing. So we talk and just figure out what are their goals. And then the next step, if I end up working with a woman, and this is the one-on-one, I do a similar thing in workshops with companies. But
you said something about a 4-step process that you go through, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically 4 phases, and the first phase is discover more about who you are. So it's discovering yourself, right? And that there's a whole bunch in that. That takes the longest, but that's the thing where we dig into like, what are your passions? You know, what are your strengths? What are your top shaping experiences? That kind of a thing. And then we move from there to assessing who you are. And that's where it's like we do this check of, you know, does our self-perception match our reputation? And things like, you know, growth mindset versus fixed mindset or emotional intelligence, that kind of a thing. And then the third phase is tell who you are. And that's the whole from social media to online presence in general to even like LinkedIn, resume, all that kind of stuff. And then the last is give who you are. And that's where you live it out. That's where you just try to figure out, you know, how am I going to, now that I authentically know really who I am and how to communicate that from a position of strength, how do I live that out and what are my next steps?
And it might also set the stage for you to be able to say no to things that people are asking you to do that don't necessarily are in alignment with your purpose or your mission or what it is that you want to do, right?
Right, yeah. And I think what's so interesting is when I go through this process one-on-one and we really dig into even things like, you know, what are you passionate about? That's a hard question for a lot of people, you know? And so, and I always encourage people to, you know, don't think you have to be passionate about something you're not passionate about. You know what I mean? So like, I always share the story when I had kids and they were little, you know, like preschool age. And I just thought because I was a mom, I had to be passionate about doing crafts. And I would do the whole, you know, when it was somebody's birthday, you know, bring 34, you know, matching crafts or cupcakes or whatever, or on the holidays you volunteer to help with the crafts in the classroom. And I finally realized I hate crafts. And I'm not going to pretend just because I'm a mom that I love crafts. There are other people who do love crafts, and that's awesome.
For them. That's for them. Yeah.
And so to your point, it helps you figure out what to say yes to, what to say no to, and then just to really lean into the things that you're naturally, that fire you up and energize you instead of, leave you feeling drained. Because when you bring that level of energy, you're likely going to make the greatest contribution.
Right. Yeah. And doing things that you don't want to do, but you feel obligated to do, maybe it'll make it a little bit easier to say, no, thank you, I'll pass.
Yes, totally. I mean, we all have to roll our sleeves up and do stuff that we don't love, at certain times. But it totally informs, when you go through that phase 1 of really discovering more about who you are, it really informs the things you say yes or no to. And it also informs, your next steps, because you can't really set that vision and direction for your life, if you will, until you know more about who you are, right? And so when you're talking about setting goals and setting out steps to reach those goals, you got to do the big work first, right? And then so that informs that. So it just helps give clarity.
So how long does the process usually take to go through all your 4 phases from start to finish? Is it something that you meet once a week, once a month? Are you full day? How do you work that way?
You know what? It's pretty much individualized, but most often with the clients that I work with, we have 4 separate sessions within a 6-week period, so we can keep the momentum going. Yeah, but there are women that I've worked with up to 8 months. It just it just really depends on where they're at in their life and what we agree upon, and then we'll have a touch point and we'll review and that kind of a thing. For companies, for example, I did a workshop with a group of leaders from a company, and it was 1 day. And it was pre-workshop questions, and so I could really get an understanding of where the group was, and then we went through all 4 phases within that 1-day workshop. So,
So what are some of the things that you got to work through when you worked with the leaders in a company?
So basically, the first is awareness of personal brand, and just making sure everybody knows that we all have a personal brand. And from a company's perspective, and this is an exciting thing because this is gaining so much traction, from a company's perspective, your employee brands can weaken or strengthen your company brand, right? And so in today's day and age, reputation can be a company's greatest asset.
Right. We've had some CEOs that have, done some pretty not so great things that have damaged the company brand because of their own personal brand.
Absolutely.
But then on the flip side, you've had companies, CEOs have done really well with things and then, lifted the whole company brand too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because back in 2016, Forbes had an article and they said that 92% of consumers trust an influencer more than an advertisement. And I just read an article on LinkedIn recently where it said, and I hope I'm getting this right, but 82% of customers would trust a company more if their CEO and leaders were actively engaging on social media and were out there online. So not if, but when their CEOs and leaders were doing this, 82% of people trusted that company more, and 77% of those would buy from that company. So it goes to that trust, that reputation, and the fact that we've got this, the ability online for instant information, and it can strengthen or weaken.
And the authenticity of the CEO can kind of shine through the rest of the employees, because it starts at the top, and how the leader behaves can then, filter through, and then it also, if you've got somebody that's acting in a manner that people want to trust, then I could see how that could really help with, boosting revenue and the bottom line and branding and all of those things. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And so back to your question on what do we do in the workshop. So it starts with that, is an awareness, and how does it impact your company, and why are we even having this conversation? Why does it matter in today's day and age? And then we move into some more custom things for the group, like developing a personal brand statement. It's, your 30-second elevator pitch where somebody says, what do you do? And it speaks to what you do, how you do it uniquely, the people that you serve. So helping them to craft a personal brand statement, and then helping them understand how their personal brand feeds into their company brand. Nice. But the coolest thing that came out of that session, and this is something that I love to see within teams, is that when you have a bunch of people who do that underground work, their roots, and figure out okay, who am I? what are my strengths? What do I uniquely bring to the table? And they realize everybody's bringing something unique, right?
Right.
Even their experiences. So like you and I could go through the same thing, but we're going to go through it differently because we're different people, right? And so to see all these people who are the same level and even some competition within that level within this company, realize everybody is bringing something different and everybody is unique, then it helps to eliminate that competition and increase that collaboration because it's everybody's leaning into their strengths, and it's that's a cool thing to see when people, the light bulbs go off and they're realizing, oh, I bring this and nobody else brings this unique blend of this, and this to my role, you know. So.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, how the different strengths of the team can benefit the team as a whole. Yeah. And, you know, if you can find people who fill some of that void, you know, if we need detail-oriented people versus, you know, high-level thinkers, and if we have all high-level thinkers and no detail-oriented people, then, you know, hey, we can think about ideas all we want, but if we don't have the people that can implement and be, you know, the details behind the scenes, then, you know, it doesn't always work out so much. So it's good to incorporate all of those different types of team members in place. That's good. Yeah. I mean, and it's very similar to where you're doing the personal branding work on the personal side and then looking at the company on the whole side with our audits and our needs assessments. I mean, it's very similar, but when you said personal brand essence statement, you know, and it feeds right into the company essence statement. I think that's a very valuable tool. It's like you need to do the personal branding first, and then you can do your company brand. And you know, you go in first. We'll take care of our people, you know, personally, and then we'll come take care of them, you know, as a whole for the company. That's great.
And I think too, even something that I saw at this last conference where you and I both spoke at was we were talking about personal branding a little bit, and one of the things that's so common is we so easily can point out our weaknesses, right?
Oh,
so,
absolutely, yeah.
So if I were to say, hey, what are your top 3 weaknesses? You might go, oh, this, and that. I mean, I know I would. Right. But if I'm like, hey, what are your top 3 strengths? Then we, you know, a lot of times either we haven't even thought about it or we don't really believe it. Or but when we've done that work with our personal brand and we're like, hey, you know what? Like you and I were talking about strength finders before we started recording. But if you know that and you're like, hey, these are my strengths and I'm leaning into this and I can show up in this way, it increases confidence too. And so that, you know, increases performance and all that other stuff. So
Well, in communication, I had Shelly G on, Shelly Gartman. You
I love Shelly.
Shelly. So we had talked about strengths a little bit too, and you know, in communicating with different types of people and different strengths that they have and the way they like to be communicated too. That can all play into that team effort. Absolutely. I love it. Strengths is kind of fun to do too. I don't know why it took me so long before I actually took the test and figured it out. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I totally can relate to that.
Did you do it was the Strength Finder 2.0? Is that the one you
I did. I know what my top 5 are. I have to unlock the rest of them. I realized that.
I haven't done that either.
I'm like, I want to know what the rest of my, you know, what's on the bottom. I know what's on the top, but I got to figure out, you know,
there is quite a bit. I was like, do I need all those? I mean, anyway.
I'd be curious to see, Well, and like with, you know, if you have a partner, like, you know, my husband and I work together and I can see what his strengths are and he absolutely, you know, compliments us and we're sort of the yin and yang. And you need that in business too. Like if you don't have your yin to your yang, you're going to, you know, like for me, I'm much more of a risk taker than what he is. And so we have to pull each other in balance. And in business, it's so true. And in leadership styles too, if you've got somebody that, you know, is more of the risk taker or a high D or I if you're doing DISC assessment, right? Influencer or dominance or whatever, then having somebody who is supportive and compliant, same thing. I mean, it's a natural equilibrium that kind of keeps the company in balance. And I mean, I really think that that's one of the reasons why we've been able to stay in business for a while because of the fact that we do have that balance. Yeah. And I see that sometimes where 2 partners get together, they're in a company and they're too much alike, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how that's going to work out.
But even just having that conversation where it's like you guys know each other's strengths and you know how you can fill in the gaps and how you can better work together and stuff like that. So I think that is awesome. Okay,
so another show note I was going to ask you about is what do you think that the benefits are of having a coach? Why would I want to have a coach? Tell me what you think that would be.
Well, and I'll speak from just experience and the feedback that I've gotten from working with clients is, I think sometimes we just need someone to come alongside us in that journey. And it really is unique to each person, right? So sometimes I might work with a woman who really needs somebody just to provide some structure and follow-up and accountability in order to move forward on this process. And sometimes I'll work with a woman who really needs encouragement and a boost in confidence. Sure. There are other women who they have all of that, but they have a couple things they just haven't yet overcome, and they just need to explore that and get some tools and resources to be able to move past whatever that fear or roadblock or whatever might be. So it's just really, it's different for every client that I've worked with. Right. But I think it goes back to, and this is just a passion of mine, it goes back to my company name, Her Team Success, is that we need each other. Yeah. And just being able to come alongside women and to help move them forward and to help propel them forward has been such a rewarding process. It's been really awesome.
Have you had a coach? Has a coach had a coach?
I have had informal coaches and mentors and sponsors my whole life. I mean, I'm a community person, and so I just naturally gravitate toward other people, especially toward women. They're just kind of my peeps, and so even way back to when, I was first a mom, and just, I didn't even know what I was doing as mom. My daughter was 6 months old, but I felt this tug on my heart to start mentoring teen moms and just coming alongside teenagers and doing that. And then for me, like when I started on my writing journey, just to be able to have writing mentors in my life. And I had a writing critique group. And so I've always had people speaking into my life and coaching me or mentoring me in that way. And sometimes I didn't even recognize it when it was happening, but definitely have always had that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think somebody once said, and I'll have to think about who it was, but even, basketball players have coaches, right? Yeah. And they have different types of coaches for the different types of plays and things that they're doing. They have, maybe a spiritual coach. Maybe they'll have a physical therapist. Maybe they'll have, somebody that's going to, figure out how to feed them. So a nutritionist and all of those things. And I've been kind of going through quite a life journey in weight loss. So I've had some weight loss coaching and, and I've had like Ron Price, who's come in and helped with our company as a whole. And now I'm a part of a CEO forum called Renaissance Executive Forum. And Keith York is the facilitator of that. But then there's other CEOs who are belonging to this group together with us. Yeah. And so peer mentoring too is just as important as somebody who you can look up to and get advice from. And
I'm part of the Professional Coaching Association, and such stellar, amazing people who have really just come alongside me and even helped me from the first point of like starting my practice and that kind of a thing. But I want to go back to what you said about your weight loss journey, because I think that's such a great example of you having a strong personal brand. So here you are, CEO, woman leader, active in your community, active in all these circles, and you're sharing, just as part of who you are, this weight loss journey. I've seen you on Facebook, and so people are looking at that. You're a real person. You're a real woman. You have this real journey that you're on, and people can relate to that. And so it's just showing up. It's like you know who you are. You're leading with your strengths. You're sharing your journey. You're sharing your story. But it's connected to your business and what you do too.
Absolutely.
And it just makes you so relatable. And so anyway, you're a good example.
I have to say, I was at Costco yesterday, ran into somebody I knew, and I was standing there, looking through the different sizes, and I got to pick out a size that was smaller than what I, had been wearing. And like, it was a moment of like, I got to, feel joy and like, share it with just, somebody that I don't know that well, but I start, you go to Costco, you see everybody, I feel like it's like a reunion.
Well, in this town, everywhere you go, you see somebody. Yeah.
And so it was just, it's a nice feeling, and it's about, it is, health and, branding and, the image that you want to portray. And it's not necessarily because I have to lose weight because I, want to look that way. I want to truly feel good. And, I turned 40 this year, and it's like half my life. And now I need to, get back in shape and do the things that I want to do and how I want to do it. And I had to have help along the way, It's just, I tried on my own, and I realized this is not going to happen on my own. So by, getting help and, sometimes it's okay to ask other people to help you.
Oh, gosh,
and I think too, women, like, we have a hard time asking for help in some cases.
Yeah.
But you just have to recognize it and realize it, and and people are willing to help you out and figure things out for you and with you. Now, some people you have to pay to do that, but
Yeah.
but it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth the money that you spend on yourself in some cases. And
Yes.
it's true. I went on a almost 8-mile hike yesterday that I never would have done.
So cool.
And, I used to a long time ago before injury, before weight gain, all that. But I felt really good about it, and I want to do it again, even though I'm sore. I'm really sore, but it's good.
Well, and I just love how you share that too. And I think it just points to the fact that we're all people. And we're not just our job. We're not just what we do. We're whole people.
Yeah.
And so, like, even when I take women or clients through the process of, like, identifying your passions, we don't just talk about what are your professional passions. Right. We say, what are your personal passions? And what are your professional passions? Because those are woven together. You're a whole person, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that you share that.
I always laugh when people say, well, how do you do it all, work-life balance? I'm like, well, first of all, there's
it's
no
all
balance.
one, yeah.
It's just one big thing, you can't balance anything. You just make it all a part of it, and my kids sometimes are a part of what we do. I've had, we were at that Boise State conference. In fact, my kids came to Boise State because they had the day off.
My
from a
daughter
teacher
came
in
and said
service.
hi to us in between classes.
Because there was an in-service that day. And so now they're finally kind of old enough to be able to sort of be on their own, but not. And so they got to hang out at Boise State for a little while.
Yeah.
And it was really pretty cool to share that experience with them.
Yeah.
And take them around campus and show, where I went for my undergrad. And,
I remember you told me, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so they're a part of it,
Yeah.
And so the balance really truly isn't there. It's just that it's all one big life that we lead.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
But okay, so a couple more questions.
Yeah.
You have a major event coming up in January. Let's talk a little bit about the history of this event and then what you're hoping for to see what's coming up in January.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. So this event is called Lift, and it's an annual conference that we have every year as part of an organization that I co-founded with 2 other women here in the Treasure Valley. So Kirsten Holmberg and Pam Strain. And we just started, it's so funny how it started actually, because it was so grassroots, and it still is pretty grassroots. But we met each other, it was random but not random, and we would just have coffee and we were talking, and we realized we had this shared passion for helping women. And we also realized that we kept having, in our conversations, like I shared with you, the same types of topics would come up. How do I overcome my fears? How do I find my purpose? All of that. And so we thought, you know what, let's create an event where we can gather women together and talk about these topics, just short, inspiring talks, give them a place to land, and just encourage them and equip them, hopefully, So we had our first event 3 years ago, and we thought, maybe 30 people would come.
Oh, sure.
Like literally, we weren't planning on this big thing, but we had like 120 come to that first event.
That first event, that's great.
And it's grown every year. And so our event this year is on January 24th, and it's going to be at Boise State, so we're really excited about that. We don't have all the details figured out, but basically the way that it has been is 3 short, inspiring talks. We're thinking about doing a panel this year, but just kind of a fun girls' night out. It's always on a Thursday night, dessert, coffee, that kind of thing. Kind of a short and sweet night, but a gathering for women to come together, have fun, and then just be encouraged and equipped, So, so they can live inspired, fearless, and thriving. That's the
live inspired, fearless, and thriving.
Yeah, lift.
Yes. Okay, live inspired, fearless, thriving.
Yes.
Got it. That's what that. Okay, I get the acronym now.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so it's lifthigh.org, right?
Liftedhigh.org.
Liftedhigh.org.
Yeah, we don't have registration open yet, but that'll be happening soon.
Liftedhigh.org.
Yes.
Okay, like HIGH. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be sure and put that in the show notes as well. But so January 24th.
January 24th.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So one more question.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
You know what? I actually hope to see myself doing really what I'm doing today. I feel that I feel really lucky. I feel like I'm living in my sweet spot. I feel like I get to come alongside women and help them, which is what I love to do. I love to be able to do motivational speaking, which is I'm able to do quite frequently, which I love. And then with my coaching and consulting practice, I really, the opportunities to work with companies is becoming more frequent, and I'm really excited about that because I see the power of getting those teams together and, like I said, being able to recognize each other's strengths and just the importance of everybody's individual personal brand and then how that touches the company's brand. So if I could just do more of what I'm doing now, that I would just love that. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I love it. Yeah. What about you?
Oh, well, when you were just talking about that, I just did a workshop on Twitter for elected officials.
A workshop on Twitter?
Yeah, so it was about Twitter. So it was like Twitter basics.
You didn't do it on Twitter. You did it about Twitter.
At a conference. Okay. Yeah, and they hired me to come and actually talk to elected officials about, how to behave and respond and, act, which was super fun. But it just kind of gave me this idea of, I like to teach workshops too, and
we should collaborate on
collaboration and doing that. And I love to bring other people in because it just widens the area of people that we can reach, but then also the topic and the value that you can give. And so for me too, I like to speak, I like to present, I like to share the knowledge that I have, and what really makes me happy is when other people can use what I teach them in their practice and their work and what they do. And we're all about building brands and bottom lines, and in your case, personal branding, but it really does dovetail nicely into a whole company brand, and I could see where that could really fit in. But I am continuously, encouraged to also write a book, so I want to get that done.
Good for you. We'll have to talk about that.
Right, yeah, exactly. I know. How did you get it done and everything and mom and doing all this work? But I get inspired by other people who've said, "Oh, I've done that before," and I can rely on. Now, I need a spelling coach. How would you grammar?
I do not know. That would not be me.
So I can always tell when something's wrong. I just don't always know what's wrong with it. Yeah. Anyway.
But I want to tell you, I love how you just said out loud, and maybe you say it all the time, that you're going to write a book. Because now it's like, because when you say it, it's like, okay, it's out there. So now next time I see you, I can say, hey,
how's that coming along?
How's the book coming along, so.
Well, and I, because Shelley's written some books too, and so for the podcast listeners, she held her phone up, to her mouth, and so she voice, dictates it. So our camera people can see that, but I've kind of taken that as a thought and have recorded some things, when I'm driving, and
good for you.
Hands-free, of course. But I mean, what would you say, and you've written books before, what would be your, top pointers of how to get somebody to be able to, rise to this occasion to write a book?
Yes.
What would you say?
I would say exactly what you're doing is start doing it. Just do it. And don't feel like it has to be a chapter a day or you've got to finish the manuscript by the end of the year. I mean, obviously, if you've got this on your mind and your heart, which it sounds like you do, and you're feeling passionate about it, just chip away at it. I mean, you're busy, you run a company, you've got kids, you have all this other stuff in your life. But if you're just chipping away at it, if you're writing, you're a writer. And if you keep doing that, you're going to end up with a book. And then you make the decision on how do you want to go with a literary agent? Do you want to do traditional publishing? Do you want to self-publish? So there's that whole...
Oh, that's a whole nother area.
That's a whole nother area.
That's like a whole nother podcast to talk about. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But just the fact that you're doing it, you're writing it, you're speaking it, however it is, it's coming out. And I think that's the most important thing you can be doing.
Well, thanks for that. We'll have to put some of that into practice and see how I can make it all happen.
Yes.
So any final thoughts or tips or tricks or anything that you would like to share in relating to personal branding? Maybe some advice you've given before that maybe our audience can, glean from you today?
I think the advice that I would just leave you with is if you haven't taken time to really just think about your personal brand and strengthen it, I would really encourage you to just start with that phase 1, which is discover more about who you are. So don't get overwhelmed with trying to figure out, do I need a blog or a website, or oh my gosh, I've got to increase my number of followers, or what online platform should I be on? And just really take a step back, take a deep breath, and just figure out, who am I? Simple things like if you haven't done a strength assessment, do a strength assessment.
Absolutely.
It's so worth it. Don't guess what you're good at. Just really figure out what you're good at so you can lean into your strengths and show up in that way. And think about your passions. Give yourself permission to dream. Think about your life experiences. We've all gone through, like I said, different things, sometimes the same things, but we go through them in different ways. And our experiences often equip us and shape us for what we're supposed to be doing. And so do a self-inventory, go through that process of personal branding and strengthening yours, and even just, Google personal mission statement, write a personal mission statement. Google personal brand statement, write a personal brand statement, and just kind of put together a toolbox for yourself. And then that's going to let you lead in a position of strength no matter what your career, your job, your next step, your personal life, whatever. But really take that time to do that foundational piece. That's the most important. And then when you do that, it informs all those other steps, and they just kind of naturally fall into place. So
that's great advice. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming by the Pepper Shock studio today.
Thank you for having me.
And for sure.
Appreciate
it.
it.
We'll put the podcast, and then we'll have some interview clips in the webinars and everything on the Marketing Expedition series. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that you'll subscribe to us and listen to some more Marketing Expedition webinars and podcasts. And also, we have an exclusive Facebook group that you can join. Just look for Marketing Expedition members, and you can be a part of that as well. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Expedition podcast. Find more online at peppershock.com.